Hello, everyone. Richard Westwood here from St Anne's Church in Chasetown with a midweek message as part of our series exploring what are we living for. And I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Linda Hood, who lives in Birtwood and has been a good friend to St Anne's and many other churches in our area. So, Linda, it's lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us some of your time today and your wisdom as well. And we're going to be exploring the theme of contentment today, and I hope that as we have a few minutes online to bat some ideas back and forwards, it might be a starter for the conversations that I hope will happen in the discussion groups or in the discussion sheet, which is available on the website as well. So Linda and I have agreed a few questions that we're going to ask each other, and we've scratched each other's heads, metaphorically speaking, and to see how we might explore some of these themes. And as we explore this whole idea of what we're living for, lots of people, it seems to me, in our world, come across this idea of just wanting to have an easy life. I don't want to have any stress, any difficulty, any struggle. And it kind of leads me to this thought of what contentment might be. So I wonder whether we might share with one another what contentment means when we hear that word. What's in your head, Linda?
I think it's quite different what I think of as contentment and what people in the world do. Because in that sense, people say, oh, I don't want any hassle. I want everyone to leave me alone. I just want to be able to get on and do what I want. Mm-hmm. But contentment for me isn't so much a feeling, which I think they often want. It's more a way of life, an attitude that says, this is how things are, and I'm going to accept that.
Okay.
So, for me, it's quite different to that sort of wanting hassle.
So you're describing kind of an acceptance of the way things are, really, or how they're going to be. Is that right?
I think so. A lot of people want contentment because they don't accept where they're at. They're looking for something better.
Okay, so they're yearning for something more than what's on the plate at the moment.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd go with that. I think for me the contentment seems to suggest an absence of undue worry. If you're feeling content about things, there's a low level of anxiety, hopefully, about the issues that might previously have been a worry for you. So for a lot of people, it's that freedom from worry. But I know there's kind of more going on than just the absence of worry. And I'm trying to explore what I mean by that. But I think certainly if you're an anxious person, the anxiety will be a hindrance to contentment, won't it?
Yes, it will.
Yeah. So one of the questions that flows out from that, I guess, is whether we think people, whether we think we can have contentment without God. Is it possible to have that sort of true sense of contentment without God? What do you think?
That's quite an interesting question. In one sense, I find that difficult to answer because ever since I was a teenager, I've had a faith in God. I went through a phase when I recognised that I wasn't very happy with my life. I was doing and saying things that weren't helpful, weren't kind, and I couldn't seem to stop doing those things. And it got to the stage where I thought, well, if I'm going to have a better sort of life, which is what we've been talking about, I need help. So I actually prayed a prayer, and it was something like this: God, if you exist, please help me. Very simple. And I had no certainty that there was going to be an answer to that. But the next morning, I woke up and I felt as if a great weight had been lifted off me. And I felt that, God had accepted me. And because of that, I had a measure of contentment that I've not had before, of feeling that I could cope with the world and I could live better than I had been.
Yeah.
So that was my experience. And of course, as I've always carried that experience with me, it's hard for me to see it from the point of view of someone who hasn't got faith.
Yeah. That's a lovely account of your journey there. Thank you. I can't conceive of me being content without having God in my life. So I'm not saying that people who don't have a faith in God can't be content, but I can't conceive of me in that way. So I know there are people who don't have a Christian faith who seem to be fairly peaceful and have, on the measure of it, a good life in their own description. But certainly from my point of view, what a strange noise.
Yes, that sounds.
I don't know what's happening there. We might have to stop and start again, I think, Sue.
I think so.
Okay, I'm just going to pause the recording for a moment. Well, if you heard some funny noises there, I'm sorry. We hopefully have sorted out the sound technology there. Linda and I have been teaching each other what to do with Zoom. But I was just in the middle of saying that I found it, the idea of having any sense of real contentment without an experience of God's love or knowing God in my life, I can't conceive of that. If I think back to the times before I was a Christian, the levels of anxiety and discontent that are there are so significant that I wouldn't want to go into that place,
people are always looking for something more, aren't they? They want a better something, a bigger something, a more. They want more money. They want less.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting one because that kind of leads us into some of the places where in the Bible where we've got instances where contentment is brought up, and just your description there reminds me of that passage in Luke's Gospel. I think it's I did make a note. Yeah, Luke 12, where the parable of the rich fool, the guy who plants some vegetables and then gets loads more vegetables, and then he thinks, I'll build a bigger barn. No, that's not enough. I'll make an even bigger barn. And he's kind of that lack of being satisfied with what, even though he's had a bumper crop, seems to be almost the opposite of contentment, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, he wants more. He wants bigger, better.
Yeah, and that leads to a sense of dis-ease and kind of living in the future somehow, where whatever the present is, wishing for more in the future.
Well, there's a verse in Paul's letter to the Philippian church, and he says, I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it's like to have plenty. I know what it's like to have little. And I think that acceptance, that sort of sense of, I'm not looking for more, I'll rest with what I've got, takes away a lot of worry, doesn't it?
It does. I guess Paul will have known, like as he's put it in that letter, all sorts of circumstances, and that ability to be content, whatever the circumstances are, is quite something. It's interesting. I wonder if that plays into his letter to Timothy as well. I'm thinking of 1 Timothy 6 here, verses 6 to 8. And it's at the end of quite a big instructional letter that he writes to the young church leader, Timothy. And this is in the context of comments about money. And 1 Timothy 6, verse 6 to 8 says this: godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. People who want to get rich fall into a temptation and a trap. Forgive me, I've jumped ahead at first. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. And so we would say that's quite a modest wish, isn't it? Just food and clothing.
Oh, absolutely. The basic necessities of life.
Yeah.
People are striving for more than that.
Yeah.
Actually, striving is the enemy of contentment, isn't it?
He goes on, people who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap.
So, Jesus says, don't worry about, what you're going to eat or drink. I'll provide for you. Yeah. And I think that sense of accepting that God will provide is actually really important.
Yes.
I mean, one of my favourite psalms is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He leads me beside still pastures, that lovely gentle thing. And then it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. So we're all going to have things happen to us that we can't control. And it's how we trust that God is still with us, even in those times, I think, that makes the difference.
So is this idea of potentially of a worry-free life, is that something Christians can expect, do you think, or even aspire to?
I think we can aspire to be content with what we have. I don't think we can aspire never to have any problems or worries. Worry, that's a difficult concept, isn't it? To say, oh, I'm not worried about anything, can be foolish. There are times when it is right to be concerned, or it's normal to be fearful about uncertain futures. So there's all sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think in some ways we worry about things and about people that matter to us, and if we're not expressing concern in our thinking about the needs of other people, we're probably not responding as God would want. So Paul elsewhere in his letters talks about the relentless, these are my words, not his, the relentless pressure and worry of all the churches. So he's clearly kind of metaphorically losing sleep about what's going on in the churches that he's helped to found. And that aspect, it's basically an overflow of his concern. So I think there's a balance to be struck between seeking sort of the absence of worry, which, if we're an anxious person, that would be something we'd want. And yet that carefulness, which is an aspect of wanting to see the best for others who we have responsibility for or emotions about, maybe the contentment is more about worry to do with ourselves and our own situation, in terms of material stuff, I guess,
Yes, it's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because where there are other people, there are always going to be concerns.
Yeah.
And as you say, if we're living how God wants us to live, if we're caring for others, then yes, we're going to have those worries for them, as it were, that we can't control.
It always strikes me that there's the story of the storm on the lake, and in Mark's account, Jesus is asleep on a cushion, and clearly Jesus would have been well aware of the sort of storms that could come to the lake, and yet he's able to sleep knowing that there might be a storm, there might not. It doesn't seem to be for him a problem. There's that sense of being able to rest in the moment, I suppose, and I wonder whether contentment, it has something to do with being able to live in the present well, without letting worries about the future affect our present.
Yeah, I think that's key. That really is, actually. That's a good thought.
But that ties in with your comments about trust in Psalm 23, though, doesn't it?
It does. And there's another verse that we often sort of gloss over in that. It says, he prepares a table, a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. And my enemies, I count as, things going wrong, hassle from people, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But he's saying, even in the midst of all that's going on, we can still, as it were, sit and have a cup of tea. And trust that God will help us to sort things out.
Yeah. But we probably need to finish soon, but I just wondered if there's a balance that we should seek to strike as Christian disciples, given that we haven't got endless energy or time. We want to be effective for the Lord, but also we've got human needs to have rest as well. So are there any sort of hints and tips you can give us as somebody who's worked a lot of your life and also ministered both in employed work and in the life of the church as well. What would you say would be some of the, maybe a balance equation, if you like, to do with contentment and work and worry?
That's a big question.
It is, yeah. I'm asking about balance, really, because,
Yes.
if we say we're never going to worry about anything, we're probably lying to ourselves, aren't we? So,
Yeah, I think so. Yes, I do worry about things, and often it can be little things. I know that God will help me to deal with the big things, but then I worry about, well, so and so's lost her wallet. What do I do about that? So it's the little things that can often get to me, not necessarily to other people.
Yeah.
And for me, I suppose over the years, I've come to realize if I accept where I am, who I am, what I am, that I'm seeking to do what I think God has given me to do. And that's changed over time. Then if I'm doing my best to do that, I might not always get it right. I certainly don't. But in that, I find contentment.
Yeah, that's a good phrase to hang on to. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think for me, there's often lots of calls on all of our time, isn't there? And I think part of our job is to work out, well, God, today, given that I've only got a fixed amount of time and energy, what is it that you're calling me to do? That for each of us working out, well, Lord, what's on your agenda today, Lord? And then learning to leave the other stuff that I can't deal with to one side. And I hope that that's a way that might help us to go through our daily life without being anxious about whether we're doing all that we should.
Yeah, Jesus did say, didn't he? Tomorrow's worries will look after themselves. Don't worry about them. Just focus on being who you are today and doing what you've got to do today.
Yeah, we were chatting earlier, and you came up with a lovely definition of contentment, which I tried busily to write down as you spoke it. But if I've got this right, tell me. True contentment is found in asking God to help us to live well and to trust that He will do it. If I've got that right, can you say it again? Because I might.
No, that's what I said. Well done.
Go on.
For me, true contentment is found in asking God to help me to live well, and in trusting that God will help me to do that.
Yeah. That's a good point to end. Linda, thank you so much for taking some time to share those thoughts and wisdom, and you have a lot more wisdom than you give yourself credit for, so thank you very much. I'm going to lead us in a prayer just now, if that's okay, as we close this recording. Living God, thank you that you have such good longings for us, and we acknowledge before you, Lord, that often our worries and anxieties, our strainings for better and more, can get in the way of the life that you want to give us. Lord, free us up to receive all that you want to give us, and give us ability to trust that whatever the next day brings, you will equip us for it and be with us in it. We ask this in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Linda. I'm really grateful for your time. God bless, and see you soon.
God bless you. Bye.